We will now return to the third element in the structure of the Tullman model, namely the warrant. As we stated earlier, a warrant is an inference or an assumption, a belief or principle that is taken for granted. Warrants or assumptions underlie all the claims we make, just as a foundation underpins the structure of a building. You may also view a warrant as a connecting link that acts as a bridge between claim and support. Claim and support or lack of support are relatively easy to uncover in most arguments. One thing that makes the warrant different is that it is often unexpressed and therefore unexamined by both writer, reader or listener because they take it for granted. Another way to look at the warrant is to ask yourselves this question: what general principle or assumption would I have to believe in order to accept the claim, given the support or supports I have to go on? Remember, the success of any argument depends on at least understanding your own warrants or assumptions and those of your audience. Remember also that even if a reader agrees that the support is sound, the support cannot prove the validity of the claim unless the reader also agrees with the underlying assumption or warrant. If we look at the following statement, John is untrustworthy because he always forgets to do his homework, we should be able to uncover the claim fairly easily. John is untrustworthy. Likewise, we can identify the support or evidence for this claim, because he always forgets to do his homework. We cannot see the warrant because it is hidden or implicit. So we must ask ourselves what the assumption is that connects the claim to the supports. The assumption or warrant here is that forgetful people are always untrustworthy. A lot of argumentative essay writing or structural debate involves trying to uncover the assumption or warrant that link claim and data together. Sometimes you can dig deeper and treat the uncovered warrant as another claim with its own set of supports, etc. This mining for the warrant can uncover the foundational assumptions that all arguments are ultimately based on. In this example, we can see again how a warrant works. I make a claim that adoption of a vegetarian diet leads to a healthier and longer life. I support that claim by stating that the authors of Becoming a Vegetarian Family say so. What warrant do you think is at work here? The warrant which underpins this support is that the authors of Becoming a Vegetarian Family are reliable sources of information on diet. Here the warrant guarantees a connecting link between the claim and support. Notice that you must agree with the assumption or warrant that the testimony of experts is trustworthy before you can arrive at the conclusion that a vegetarian diet is healthy. Sometimes you can have multiple warrants operating in a single paragraph at the same time. Read this article and locate the claim. Claim: I think we should ban handguns in this country. Locate the supports or evidence for such a claim. Support. There is no practical necessity to own a handgun. If you need to defend yourself, you can just as well use a shotgun. How many warrants can you locate in this paragraph? 1. Self-defense is a practical necessity. If you use a gun in self-defense, the assumption or warrant here is that self-defense is a practical purpose or necessity. 2. Sport is not a practical necessity. 3. The government is allowed to ban dangerous things. It can do so because it is within its mandate. 4. A handgun is more dangerous than a shotgun. 5. Small weapons are more dangerous than bigger ones. Smaller weapons are easier to conceal than larger weapons, making them more dangerous. How do we know if a warrant is valid? We cannot answer this question until we consider a new concept, namely the backing. Everyone's warrant or assumption rests on something else that gives it authority. This is what we call backing. Backing or authority could consist of research data that backs up and thereby strengthens the warrant. If the warrant is unprovable, the claim is also unprovable, even if the evidence or support is true. In that case, we can say that evidence on its own cannot guarantee the soundness of the claim. The following dialogue offers an example of the relationship between the warrant and the other elements of the argument. I will also introduce two new terms, qualifier and reservation. We can now examine the dialogue and pick out the claim. Claim: you should not talk on your mobile phone while driving. Support: talking on your mobile phone while driving is unsafe. Warrant: you should not do unsafe things while driving. Backing: data proving the danger of doing unsafe things while driving. Let us now return to the idea of a qualifier. A claim is often modified by one or more qualifiers, which limits or softens the claim and can make it easier to defend. The qualifier may be a term like probably, most likely, in most cases, or usually. What does our other term, reservation or rebuttal, mean? Reservations can modify or limit warrants by pointing out that there are conditions under which the warrant or warrants will not be relevant. In the mobile phone example, a reservation would be that using a mobile phone while driving is not as dangerous if you use a hands-free option. What you are doing here is giving yourself the opportunity to strengthen your argument by anticipating your opponent's reservations or rebuttals before he or she challenges your claim. In the light of these reservations, you may now decide to modify your claim with a qualifier using words like in most cases, probably, or usually. We will now bring all our terms together in one place as we consider the following scenario. You are driving along, you look at the horizon and you see black smoke billowing up from behind a cluster of houses. You can tell by the location of the smoke that it is not a chimney fire. All you know is that it is coming from behind some of the houses. In this situation, the data, the proof or the support is the smoke rising over the horizon. You immediately make an assumption or inference that this is a fire emergency and you need to call the fire services. Your claim is there is a fire emergency. Your warrant is where there's smoke, there's fire. But this goes beyond that to another stronger warrant, namely fire destroys houses. You may choose to give backing to your claim by citing some scientific reports that link fire to smoke or fire department statistics about similar links. Your warrant may be true most of the time under certain conditions, but somebody might say, well, yes, I agree that where there's smoke, there's fire, and yes, I agree that fire destroys houses. But does that mean that this particular situation is an emergency? This challenge is the rebuttal, or reservation, we talked about earlier. The rebuttal concerns the way the warrant applies to the data. Now, it is very important to clarify the way Tullman uses the word rebuttal. It is not just any counter-argument, but specifically a counter-argument that looks at the warrant and says, yes, generally that is true, and looks at the data and agrees that the data is also generally true. The challenge is to the specific warrant and its application to the specific data. In other words, the question asked by the rebuttal is this a valid warrant in this particular situation? Does it lead us from the particular data to the particular claim? If we were to put that rebuttal into words, it might be a contained or controlled fire, such as a barbecue pit or a leaf pile, could cause smoke without indicating that the house was burning. This rebuttal might result in you checking the data again to see whether your first inference was correct. Adding a qualifier would then say that this claim would only apply to this data under these conditions. But to know what these conditions are, we would need to know what the rebuttal is. Now for a quick recap. Once you have located the claim in a piece of writing or other media, look for information or data that supports that claim. In your own case, you might notice a pattern in data you observe and then make a claim, similar to the scientific approach. The assumption that a reader has to accept in order to accept the link between claim and support is the warrant. Any information that might be needed to support the warrant is the backing. Rebuttals or reservations are limits or modifications of the warrant, that is, conditions under which the warrant would not apply. Qualifiers are words or phrases that limit the claim. These may be added to strengthen the claim after a successful rebuttal of the warrant. Remember that not all of the different parts of the Tullman model will be present in all arguments, but it is a very valuable exercise to seek to uncover the warrant or warrants present and to anticipate rebuttals or reservations in order to strengthen your claim with an appropriate qualifier. Some assumptions or warrants are unstated because the arguer either believes that the warrant is so obvious that there is no need to express it, or they may want to conceal the warrant in the hope that the listener or reader will overlook its weakness. If we take the assumption of first come, first served, most of us would agree that this warrant is taken as an article of faith, that we would seldom question in ordinary circumstances. In other words, most of us would not feel the need to state this assumption. Suppose you heard somebody make the claim, "I deserve to get the last ticket to the concert." If you ask why he or she deserves it, you might get the answer, "Because I was here first." No doubt you accept the claim without further argument because you understand and agree with the warrant that is not expressed. If you arrive first, you deserve to be served before those who come later. Can you think of a situation where this unexamined assumption should not apply? Answer: in the case of someone who needs vital medication that is in short supply. Discuss. Sometime offering a reservation or a rebuttal to a long-held but unexamined warrant or assumption can produce an interesting and original argument. If somebody exclaims, "All this buying of gifts just adds to the commercialization of Christmas when we should be celebrating a religious festival," what, in your opinion, is the assumed warrant here that has not been made explicit? The unstated warrant here is that the buying of gifts violates what should be a religious celebration. But one writer took on this assumption and, in an essay titled "Let's Keep Christmas Commercial," argued that, contrary to popular belief and unchallenged assumption, the purchase of gifts, which means the expenditure of time, money and thought on others rather than on oneself, is not a violation but an affirmation of the Christmas spirit.